not going to have it moved into the shop tonight. So that about wraps up the video.
Hey guys, welcome back. As usual, we'll show the finished product first. This is a simple 1-gallon Scepter fuel tank you can buy at Walmart or pretty much anywhere. I see these all over the place. This I have repurposed as a fuel cell or an auxiliary fuel tank. What you're used to seeing on one of these fuel cans is one of these. You got to hold the thing in the air, push that tab down and palm it and let the fuel come down, and that's your breather vent. We'll get into that later in the video. I needed to build one of these because I have a 65 Galaxy that the fuel tank ruptured on over the summer randomly. Let's not make any Ford jokes, but of course I need a way of getting the car from where it is into here. So I built one of these. This is not meant to be a permanent solution. You just strap this in place with a ratchet strap, etc. This is really meant assuming your mechanical fuel pump is operating or you have a very low pressure electric fuel pump. This is not recommended or designed to have a fuel return or really even be used for a high pressure fuel system, even though this is just the suction side or the vacuum side. This is really just for the older cars, carbureted. And I know some carburetors do have a fuel return. You could make it work that way, but then you'd possibly run into an aeration issue. But with such low pressure, you probably wouldn't have to worry about cavitation. But anyway, we don't need to get into any of that because, as stated, this is really just for simple one pickup to a fuel pump and then the pressure line to a carburetor. As usual, things didn't go exactly as I had envisioned them. The end product did, but the method to get to this point changed quite a bit during the making of the video, and I don't expect you guys to have a weird assortment of random things. For instance, this metal line coming out of what was the breather is one of these. This is a Schrader valve extension for a dual rear wheel. This would go on the inner wheel and making sure the outer wheel, the D hole is lined up. That way you can just air up the inner wheel from the wheel well of the outer wheel. I don't expect anyone to have these laying around, but these are readily available pretty much at any heavier duty tire store. Pretty sure, I mean, you can buy these on Amazon, you can buy these anywhere. I think they're like $4. Of course, we have the Schrader valve removed, but we'll get into that in the video. So again, it's an odd part I don't expect anyone to have laying around. And also I wound up using DOT line for the remainder of the pickup, if you hadn't noticed already. But we'll get into the construction of this. Not too much in depth, only because this video is kind of turned from a tutorial more so to just somewhat entertainment of, hey, this is what I've got going on. This is what I built. Ooh, ah, whatever. Build one if you want. Improve the design. Or just get a rubber cap from Home Depot, a PVC test cap, and clamp it to here, poke a hole, and then put your fuel line in there, and that's all you have to do. Or you can build one of these. But yeah. So guys, without me rambling on any more than necessary, let's get to it. So let's familiarize ourselves with just the nozzle portion. We'll go ahead and remove this part of it. It's kind of a pain in the butt. To get this nozzle off, there are two tangs. One right here and one up here. Now I've already kind of butchered this. There is no easy way to get these off. Nothing on this nozzle is designed to be taken apart. Not on purpose, it's just these are meant to be put together once and that's it. If there's ever a malfunction or a O-ring leaks, you throw them away. That's it. They're not serviceable. I've already kind of got in here and butchered the plastic around it because I'm never using this thing again. So once you get this off, you're left with this. So to see how this works, you fold that tab up, and it pushes forward. Notice how you have a separate plunger for the breather and a separate plunger for the fuel. So side by side, you guys kind of get the point. You have your separate channel for the air, which is going to be traveling down this channel to this hole, which of course is attached to this tube. So what we're going to do is repurpose this channel as the fuel pickup, which would turn this section into the breather. So right away, not to jump ahead, but you'll see on mine, I modified it. I need to clean it up a little bit more, but I had removed this bottom breather plunger. So that's going to be one of the first things you need to do. But let's take a pause for a second and talk about this whole mechanism and what's sitting here and why I don't really recommend, unfortunately, you dismantling this. It goes like this. This plunger goes in first, just like that. You have an O-ring. You have this little spring seat. That goes on next. You have your spring. It presses everything down in place. Now this piece, which of course acts as the handle pivot, or it acts as the nozzle pivot and all that fun stuff. You have this little plastic bushing that goes through and the spring and all that other fun stuff. You've got to play around with it to get everything apart, and it's a little finicky, but it's really not that hard to get apart, this side of it. And then you're left with this. Now the problem is you have these two tangs which are notched out, and they're designed to fall in, these grooves are designed to fall into these notches like that. But that's all happening in this diaphragm. That's all happening in this diaphragm. And don't forget, you have the spring in the way. So when this is all connected and it's down in there, you have very little space. You have to compress the spring all the way down to be flush with this point, to where you can somehow pry those notches out of the grooves. And you can see how butchered up mine is. I just went for it and I didn't care at that point if I broke anything. I had this piece in my drill press and I was using the chuck as a press, and I had like a Torx bit that went down through this little notch. You can barely see, there is a small little groove where you can see like kind of a piece of the spring, and I was pressing the spring down, but of course everything was just binding out of the way. I had like 3 different picks and 4 screwdrivers just prying in, and I really just wrestled the heck out of it until it all came apart. The reason I dismantled mine, 2 reasons. One, I wanted to get this out of the way so I could tap this. Even though it is just plastic, I wanted a clean shot at it. The second reason is the spring tension is very tight. And I wanted a way to just push this forward and keep it open with a rubber band. But as you can see, it's pretty tight, because this is designed, if it ever tips over, everything holds the fuel in place. That's what this is for. So not to discourage you guys, but this part was not easy. What I am doing is I'm going to cut some of the windings off of this spring so it's very soft. Like I said, that way I will be able to keep the new breather section open while it's in the car and the car is running. But then when
the car is stored in here and I still want to leave the fuel cell hooked up, I can remove the rubber band and it closes the new breather section. So one, the fuel doesn't not so much evaporate, but then you don't have your whole shop smelling like fuel, etc., etc. So my advice to you, I would just find something to put in here. I mean, even something as small as a screwdriver is all you really need. Because all you need to do is open up the path for air to replace the fuel that's being removed. That's it. Now, the problem is this sitting under the hood of your car, you might be leery about all the screwdriver falling out into your belts or into your fan. So maybe not use a screwdriver, figure something out, just enough, just cram something in there, some kind of a U-shaped item that you're not worried about falling out. But then you also have to not lose that piece.
So guys, really quick, we'll look at the one feature I like about the can itself, and that it does have this little baffle in here. It doesn't go all the way to the bottom, unfortunately. So in our case, I'm actually going to remove the baffle and punch the bottom out. But it's nice, you can see those three grooves. Those will actually keep the line perfectly straight.
All right, so I got this pulled out. There are three little notches, three little grooves this thing slides into. I basically just took a 45, got down in here, and just pulled best I could.
So now you can see these little lines are going to make pushing this through easy, because they keep this lined up. They keep it somewhat lined up as you're installing it. So
our hole is drilled. This is going back in. Nope, there we go. Okay, so now she's in all the way. Pull that back out. Again, I don't need it this long, but I always sucked at this. Oh, for God's sake. There. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and remove this. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to reutilize the original pickup. I'm just going to extend it. So I have to cut the end off because it's got a ledge.
you see the piece I cut off, there's a small lip.
Well, I pretty much got it on as far as it's going to go. Now I can't get it back off, so. All right, so not much more. All right, so now that's almost perfect. That does ride up in there just a little bit. Let's see. That's almost perfect right there, guys. So that slips down in there. Give it a little push. Put it through the hole. And it still allows us to rotate this. So guys, the next step in my design, I've got our 3/8 DOT line in place. It's the right height, everything cinches down just fine. Now on the pickup side of things, I'm using this is a Schrader extension. Mine I'm leaving intact for now because the thread, it's almost a perfect hole to thread this, but you have to be kind of forceful I'll probably heat this up ever so slightly so it kind of molds into the plastic a little bit better. I don't have a tap for this. This is like an M8 or a 302 of an inch by 32 thread count. Like they don't really make a tap. I mean, I'm sure there's a tap that exists that's that thread, but most of your kits, you're not gonna find a tap like that. You don't have to use one of these. You can use regular, like a barbed fitting, but I just don't have any that's a small enough thread. That's way too big, as you can obviously see. You'd have to kind of shop around and get something that's the right size thread if you wanted to run an NPT or something. But for now, I'm gonna leave this intact while I forcefully thread this into the plastic. And that's about that. It's not perfectly straight in there, but it is what it is. Just let it sit for a minute. A little dirty, but I mean. So guys, the next part of the project is to take the Schrader valve out of this, and we're going to cut this part off. And this one's fancy because it's long. So now we'll just lob this part off. We'll get some thread sealant and we'll go ahead and install this. So I may cut this down a bit more. So now my last step is to finish off my my breather. I can see all that's going to be in the way of the hose. So since this is going to be held in the right position once it's reinstalled, I'm going to take a pair of dikes and just cut. And there we go. Need to cut this spring down. Oh. I got it. So one rubber band wrapped around twice. It is just enough. You can see it will go in a little farther. So one rubber band will be just enough to hold it open. And then when I'm not using it, it's fully seated. See? And you can turn it. You can turn it any which way. And it's completely sealed. So I know this was a lot to watch, guys, but this was the point. I now have a fully functioning working fuel cell. All I have to do is hook my pickup tube to this.